Sorry, Greg, can you hear me? I
Yeah,
can't hear anything.
someone's talking behind. I can't hear you, but yeah,
Oh,
it,
okay.
it was about public and private
Yes.
stuff, which is the public is only website T1 and
Yep.
T2 and T3 is for private.
Okay. Good.
Uh,
So that's the three-tier architecture, yeah?
yeah, so
Good. What else? You can all see my screen, right? So
yes,
let me maybe go to the section. So three-tier architecture was one of them, yeah. What else? Anyone remember what VPC was? No? Virtual private cloud, right? Okay. So we are going to basically cover the
virtual
first.
basic command line. Is it virtual basic command line or
No, virtual private cloud. That's what it stands for. Virtual private cloud. Yeah.
virtual VPC? Yeah, virtual private cloud. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Virtual private cloud. Okay, I
So
got you.
it's like your own private space on the data center. Yeah, on the data center. Okay. So today we're gonna basically cover lab one and lab two, and we'll try to get through as in detailed as. So I'm gonna point to this section here. This is where it starts to actually get real. Okay. Can someone can mute themselves, please? And hear myself in the back. Thank you. Okay, so until now, up until now, you've just been learning concepts. Okay. Today, I'm going to explain two things that once you really, really understand them, it will unlock basically all of cloud engineering. Yeah. The first one is AWS decides who can actually do that. So that's something called IAM. Yeah. Um, Two is how you actually launch a live server in the cloud. That's called EC2. So I want you to remember those two concepts, IAM and EC2. IAM is what decides who gets permissions on the server, and EC2 is how you actually deploy something live. Yeah. After the session, you'll be able to go off and actually do the first two labs and put all of this into practice. You're not going to touch anything until you understand what you're doing. So there's no point trying to, click, buttons and do configuration here and there. You have to understand what you're really doing. I'm just going to go through a few diagrams just for, just to explain how everything works. So what is IAM? Does anyone know what it stands for?
Identity and access management.
Yep, identity and access management. So that's quite long. So that's why it's shortened to IAM. So here's what it means. Identity access management is how AWS answers the question, who are you and what are you allowed to do? Does that make sense? Two questions. Who are you and what are you allowed to do in on that server, on that data center? So that's it. Every single time you click on something in AWS, in the background, IAM is asking those two questions all the time. Can you see who are you, which is your identity? So are you the admin? Are you a normal developer? Are you a tester? You're an analyst. What permissions can you do? Not everyone has the same amount of permissions. Yeah. So some developers might have only read only. Some might have access to write things on the server. Some might have even high access to actually manage other people. Okay. So that's the whole system, identity, yeah, and permission, those two things. Right. So imagine AWS as like a massive, basically a massive kingdom, yeah? You get given one account, and that account has one user at the top. That user is called the root user. So I'm gonna direct you to this diagram here. So imagine you have one account. You have AWS is a whole kingdom basically. You have one account which sits at the top. That one account is called the root. The root is always the thing at the top, which is you also consider as the king at the top. The root can do literally anything. The root can change its name, sell it, it can burn it down, close the account forever. That's you. You when you made your account on AWS, you are the root user. There's no limit at all. So the question is, does the root user run? Okay, the other question I want to say instead of saying that is, if you had a king of a country or a kingdom, would that king run the day-to-day things? The day-to-day us? Yes or no? Anyone?
Yes.
Yes, yes,
Are you sure?
yes. Because of
Are you
his
sure?
his 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 teams will.
No, 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 no. Listen to the question I'm asking. Does a king run the day-to-day? Does a king run the country day by day?
At times he would delegate some tasks to some other people on his behalf
Thank
to
you.
carry it out on his behalf.
Thank you. So that's why you have presidents, prime ministers, and that, right? So you don't allow the root user to do the day-to-day things, right? Or to run the entire kingdom. You usually appoint a prime minister, and that prime minister almost has the same power. I just try to understand that in the AWS context, yeah. So you have a root user, you're not gonna basically be doing everything from the root user. You're gonna assign someone called an admin IAM user, yeah, and you basically all like oversee everything as the root user, but the one that actually does the day-to-day thing is the IAM admin user. Okay, so does that make sense so far? Any questions? So the first thing you do in lab one is lock. Basically, you have to lock in the or secure the whole AWS. So you have to turn on something called a two-factor mul- authentication. So MFA. Anyone heard of this MFA or multi-factor authentication? Sometimes called two-factor.
Yes.
Can you tell me what it is, or can anyone tell me what that means? What is a
Like you
multi-factor?
could use your thumb,
Yeah,
or maybe you sign into Google or Facebook.
yeah. Okay, Mohammed, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, two-factor authentication is like, for example, um, for example, in Barclays Bank before was not the same way security it is now. For example, they ask you app authentication, they send you a code, uh, so on your phone, they send you email. So it's two-factor. It's not, for example, if you answer all the answer questions, security questions,
Yeah.
they are not trusting you. They will say maybe someone who knows the details, but he may not have the email or may not have the app. So they will say go to the app, and then they
Yes.
will say authenticate in the app for when and notification authentication on recommendation on the app. So you will
Yes.
tell the number or you will click tab. So they will understand this is the correct person.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, it's two types of authentication, and it basically secures like your entire whatever you're using. Most apps use multi-factor. It's especially more important for AWS servers. Why? Because that is a high risk. Someone is able to access your account as a root user, very dangerous. Even as even if you're just like doing it for your own personal projects, is extremely dangerous by because you have your billing information, you have your card information on there. You know, when you set up your account, you have your personal details like address, etc. If someone was able to get hold of that, it'll be catastrophic. So multi-factor authentication is something you have to set up. In the lab, in the first step, you'll have instructions of how to do it. You basically go to section on your sidebar, the navigation. You have to do this. Multi-factor authentication on your admin user is a non-negotiable. Yeah. If you don't set this up properly, then you're risking your account being and it becomes vulnerable if you just have only a password. Okay. So there's one more thing we do to the root. We confirm there's no access key. Basically, does anyone know has anyone heard of access keys before or anything like that? No? So access keys are like a programmatic password. That's what the access keys are. An access key is a programmatic password, a
Is it like a
software.
barcode? It's like a
Sorry?
barcode. Is it like a barcode you scan to access a generated, automated generated barcode that you can scan to access?
So is access key like a barcode, you said?
Yes.
Not quite. It is close. So access key is more like a program. Yeah, I would say it is sort of like a barcode. Mm, So it's secret, but it's also not secret. It's also hidden because the barcode you have those lines, right, to identify to
Yeah.
hide the chip underneath it. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
sort of like a barcode. Mm, But it's very important to not have access keys because it's very weak, invisible, and it's also very weak as well. If you should only set up multi-factor authentication, you should make sure you don't have any access keys um, inside of your under your IAM user. Okay, so MFA does not protect them. So if a root use if someone gets access to your root access key or it gets leaked because maybe you might accidentally push it on GitHub or you screenshot it and you send it on as a message to someone or something like that, whoever gets a hold of that will basically own your entire account within seconds. They can go log in as you and it's everything, your billing account, your servers, everything. They can even lock you out as well. Yeah. So let's zoom out a little bit. Let's go to policies. So imagine you're running or you're in a team that has maybe let's say 500 users. Yeah. So let's say you have about 500 users or 500 person company, for example. Yeah. Do you sit down and set permission for each of the 500 people individually? Yes or no? Hello? Yeah. Did someone say something?
Like each one is have it is private account.
No, no, no. I'm saying if you had a 500 people company you were working in, would you create permissions for each of the 500 individually, one by one?
No, no, it's gonna it's uh you have to permit once, not one by one. Takes time.
Exactly.
Maybe
So
you are
it's better if you do it by department, right? So you'll say
Yes.
the engineering department, finance, sales.
Yeah.
Each department has
Groups.
its own rules.
Groups.
Yeah. Yeah, you have groups or departments. Every time someone comes into the company, as a cloud engineer, you would know what department they're in, so you give them that access permission, that access. If they leave, then you remove them from the group. So they lose everything instantly. That's how IAM works. This is how you have. So you have a policy. This is some instructions. For example, you could say, can read EC2. You can list this, for example, and it's attached to a specific group. So you can have developers. Um, Another example is testers. There's different groups, right, or departments, and then this group will contain of developers will contain these people. So they all inherit from the developer policy, yeah, via inheritance. So they inherit the developer policies, or it could be more than one policy. Yeah. So three words you must remember. Policy. So first of all is user. So user, you need to know what user. Like a user is just one person, right? One human or one login. Group is basically a category, or like you put this many users into this group. And then policy is the last one. Policy is like the rule book. So you say what's allowed, what's not allowed. So you attach a policy to a group, or you attach policies to a group. Yeah. And then you put the users into a group. Yeah. You say developers, and then that user or those users will inherit all of the policies. Yeah. That's the entire system. So if Joseph gets fired, for example, what's the fastest way to remove all his AWS access? Does anyone know?
It is to uh if you need it's to block his account
No.
in
Before you block,
from
what do? You remove him from somewhere. Where do you remove him from?
from the group.
Yes, so from the developer group. So he no longer gets access. You just remove him from the group. So anything else, his account will automatically get, blocked and everything. O- Only after you remove him from, you don't need to go and block his account individually, because for example you might have like multiple people that might need to be removed, so you just better to remove them from the group, and everything else will be removed for them. You don't have to do extra work. Yeah. Okay, so what does a policy look like? So now IAM consists of a policy, a user, and a group, right? What does an actual policy look like then? So one policy statement. So a policy always has these three things. So first thing is, what's the effect? Are you allowing someone something, or are you denying someone something? Yeah. So every policy answers only these three questions. You need to, as a cloud engineer, know how to, if you're creating a policy, you need to ask yourself these questions all the time. Are you allowing a user to do something, or are you denying them from doing something? Yeah. Or you blocking. Blocking means the same thing. Are you blocking them from doing something? Or you denying them, or you allowing them from doing something? Yeah. And then the action is what's the operation? So for example, it's read EC2. Yeah, they can read the EC2 instance. Yeah. Or you can say delete 3, which is one of the services on AWS. What is the action? What are they actually allowed to do? So first is you either say allow or block. So if I said for Joseph, for example, I want to block him from deleting S3, that would be, and then the resource is what is it on? Is it on all the instances or just that one bucket? Yeah? Does that make sense? So is it on all the instances? So if I say Joseph is blocked from deleting S3, it, which instance is he blocked from? Is he blocked from one of them or all? Because AWS has like thousands of different types of rules. You need to be very specific. Otherwise, if you give the wrong rule or wrong policy, you're going to end up later on having issues with that because you give the person the wrong policy, and later on, when it gets flagged up, it's very hard to reverse that policy. Yeah. So AWS has like thousands of pre-written policies for like common jobs. So there's a one that's called read only.
Can you use more bold color than this? Because writing is very
Can you see it now?
yeah, blocking, yeah, read,
So
delete.
blocking. Yeah.
Mm.
So this is a one common example of a pre-written policy. Remember, you can write your own policy, but you can use pre-written ones, the ones that AWS gives you automatically. So that one is pre-written. mm, It's a lot easier for you to actually use them. 90% of 90% of these developers use pre-written policies anyway. But when you want to have something specific, you can say, for example, you can only view EC2, you can only list S3. That's it. Yeah. So in step 4 of lab 1, you'll have to set this up. Yeah. You have to create an entire policy. Yeah. Okay. There's one piece of information I want to really focus on, something called CloudTrail. Okay. So this is the last piece of lab 1, which you have to understand. So imagine your AWS account as like a yeah. In a shop, you have normal like staff, customers, products, right? One day, for example, what happens is, I don't know, something like £5,000 worth of stock randomly just disappears. You walk inside, what's the first question you're going to ask, or what are the few first questions you'll ask? Who took it? How did they get in? When was it taken? And if you don't have cameras, right? If you don't have CCTV or anything to watch, you know, what's happened at that specific time, you have to rewind the tape and see exactly what happened. You wouldn't know, right? It's the same thing with AWS. So when someone clicks on AWS, you set up CloudTrail, and CloudTrail is like the CCTV of AWS, yeah, of your AWS account, your account specifically. So what it does is it basically records every click, every API call, every login recorded, all stored. So, for example, you can search, for example, who deleted the server. It will give you the account that deleted the server. Which IP logged in, it will give you the actual IP address. When was multi-factor authentication turned off? So if you find yourself, okay, I didn't turn this off, I want to know, okay, who did this? Maybe you're like sharing an account with someone, or you gave permissions to someone, and you just like want to know when a certain action happened. You go through CloudTrail. So you can imagine this is a very important service to have integrated. In a real life scenario, in real companies, CloudTrail is like mandatory. Yeah. Your auditors ask for it, security teams always monitor it. So if you don't have it set up properly, or you don't know how to set it up, you're basically, you're going through your account blindly. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna go through. Does anyone have any questions about CloudTrail so far? Any questions? Any questions about CloudTrail or
S3 bucket storage that's for the storage. Is it like where you store?
yeah, so S3 bucket is a service in AWS that's used for object storage, so like static storage, so images, sound, kind of storage. It's not technically
Documents, everything.
yeah, it's not technically a database because there's another service for that. Yeah. So it's used for static objects, so like images, sound, etc. Okay. Any questions about
Okay.
CloudTrail? Does it make sense? Yeah, good. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to EC2 here. So this is, for example, you can see Amazon's data center. Yeah, let's say in London, the London one. So you have two servers here, and this is your one. This is your server, and you have a bunch of other servers as well, yeah? But this is your specific server. You rent this for about zero point 0.1 an hour. So your server has a public IP address. It has a security group, which we mentioned last week. It has a key pair because you need encryption to secure that server, right? And then you have a software you installed called Nginx, which we'll come back to later. So EC2, yeah, stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. Okay, that's what it stands for. So essentially, forget the words for now. Just imagine EC2 is like renting a computer or a server in one of Amazon's data centers. So this is the example of an EC2 server. Yeah. So you don't own it. You're renting one. So you rent it by the hour. And this is how much you rent by the hour. So you decide the specification, how powerful it would be, what operating system, how much storage you have. You control the keys. You can remote into it. When you're done, you can hand it back and stop paying it. For example, if you just decide you don't want to pay anymore, you can stop. And so think of it like imagine it's like Airbnb for like servers. Amazon owns millions and millions and millions of these machines, enormous warehouse, and you basically rent one for like 10p an hour or something like that. Okay. So what you're doing when you're creating an EC2 instance in your lab, yeah, lab two, you're renting one server, one small server inside of a massive data center. Yeah. And you specifically pick which data center you want to choose at the top of your of the configuration. So it might look like something like this: EU, North, for example, Northwest, something like that. Well, that's how you know this is the data center. Yeah. Okay. So I want to touch upon key pairs quickly. Yeah, key pairs, because this is very important. What does a key pair mean? Why do you need to have a key pair? So you rented your EC2 instance. Yeah, all good. You rented it, you set it up, have the IP address, you put the security group, etc. But now Amazon requires you to actually lock it with encryption. Okay. First thing you need to understand is how do you get into the instance? Amazon doesn't use passwords to get into a server. They don't allow you to enter through a password or a one-time PIN, or passwords could be like easily accessed, right? And even a hacker can try and guess millions of passwords, and and passwords also die as well. Instead, AWS uses a key pair, the two keys that are mathematically linked via encryption. So you have one public key, which Amazon holds, yeah, AWS. This is on the AWS, it's installed, yeah. And you have a private key which stays with you, yeah. So this, when you download it, it will give you a .pem file. Okay, right. When you try to log in, every time you log in, your private key basically will whisper to the public key and say, "Hey, look, it's me," and they basically do a handshake. So it's a mathematical handshake, and this is part of encryption and cryptography, and that's a whole separate topic. But just to understand what you can actually get into your server or your EC2 server is that you will be given a downloaded private key and AWS will hold the public key. Every time you log in, there's a handshake. Yeah. So you need to be very careful. There's a very, very huge warning. If you lose that .pen file, which you'll download later, you cannot get it back into your server. You cannot get back into your server ever. Because Amazon does not keep a copy. They only hold the public key. I want you to remember, you have to back up. So you have to save it somewhere safe, obviously, in your folders, and you have to back it up. Yeah. Also, you need to also have the right file permission. So remember, if you did Linux, you need to make sure you have the right file permission. Otherwise, you won't be able to read that PEM file. Essentially, even if you do lose it, worst case scenario, you'd have to generate a new one, but you can't get into that server. You have to create a new EC2 instance. Once you create an instance and you create a public and private key, um, y- if you lose that private key, you have to create an entire new instance. You have to do all the steps again. Yeah, any question, Tyson? Have a question, Tyson? I think you're muted if you're speaking.
Maybe he is not. He wants to talk, but maybe we cannot hear him. Maybe.
You're muted, Tyson, if you're trying to speak. Okay, that's fine.
One
Okay,
thing I want to know.
yeah,
For example, if I want to AWS, for example, you're talking about the sign-in details, or you're talking about from your laptop, and and when you sign in from your laptop, uh, how, for example, going to the website of AWS, and putting your details. For example, if you save your password on your Chrome
yeah,
and sign in automatically,
yeah.
for example, uh, is that okay? Is that your private .bim file?
You should sign in from that same device. Wherever device you downloaded that file in, you should sign in from there.
You cannot sign in from somewhere else.
If you still have that pen file in the other device, then yes. If you don't have it, you won't be able to access your server.
For example, if you for example you have two Google accounts, one of them is the one you automatically sign in.
No, we're not talking about Google. We're saying the server itself, the server. So when you access the server, when you're trying to access the server via remote SSH, you need to have this key in your computer. Yeah. If it's on another device, then you have to get it from the other. You have to log in from the other device. You won't be able to log in from this device.
We will see that in practice, or it's common
Yes.
sense.
No, you will see. I will explain it to you. Okay. So let's move on to security groups. Okay. So I think we mentioned this last session. So you need to pay attention if maybe you missed it. But security group is like a security guard or like a doorman, for example, with like basically has like a paper and just has a list of people that is allowed in and the list of people that are not allowed in. Just like imagine someone at the door of your server, and he just says, "Okay, which IP address is this? Which IP is this traffic coming from? Which port number are they trying to use?" So you are allowed access if it's your IP, your specific IP address, yeah? And you go through the port 20. Everyone else goes through this port because it's HTTP. HTTP is like accessed by all websites, right? So anywhere, anyone can visit the website, which is good, or HTTPS as well. So that would be 443, that port number. As I mentioned before, the ones that are blocked are the mm, like so the ones that are blocked are Who can remind me? The database ports, yeah? So for example, 27017. That's an example of a port that will be blocked, yeah, by the security group. So when you set up the security group, then you'll have that. You'll have to make sure it's like set blocked. If you have a database. If you don't have a database, then you don't need to block anything because you don't have a database anyway. Yeah. Mm, okay. Just one more thing. So port numbers. Does everyone know what port is? Just to double check if everyone knows what port is. Does
Port is
anyone?
is 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 where is like a protocol of that transport layer uses.
Okay.
Um, so the layer is that work together. Um, those who, for example, starting from 1 all the way 5 or from 1 all the way 7. So it's where uh, the in the network internet layer, uh,
Yeah.
and for example, um, what was the other name? Like, for example, pipe. Can we say pipe? Pipeline?
Yep. It's like a pipe. Yeah. So or think of it as like your server is like a house and you have many doors, right? Each
Yeah,
one it has a number. Yeah. So imagine your server is like your server that was on AWS has different doors, one to the website, one to the database. So each one has a number. Number is the
yeah.
port number. So
So
door 80
that's
is
where the
labeled,
data goes.
yeah.
Data, yeah, okay.
So door 80 is labeled as HTTP, door 443 HTTPS. So it's assigned a different protocol each time. 22 is SSH. So for EC2, we need two doors open. We need the SSH only for you, so only linked to your IP address because we don't want everyone to have access. And then rule two is HTTP from anywhere, so make it public. So you basically make the IP address public. Um, if you if your IP address gets changes, so if you go to like right now you're in your house or something, if you go to a cafe tomorrow, would you be able to SSH into it? No, you're not, because it has to be
Oh
the
yeah,
IP address that
yeah,
you
yeah,
assigned at the
yeah,
beginning. So if you go to a different location and you do IP address changes,
yeah. Like
you
for
need,
example, your
yeah,
sorry, your home network and your work network have got similar different IP addresses.
yeah.
For
If
example,
you,
if
yeah, go ahead.
for example, maybe one is Virgin and one is a T-Mobile. So these they may have different and they are in different locations. They cannot be same IP address.
Yeah,
So
so
each internet have a specific network IP address.
yeah,
For example,
that's correct.
your phone
That's
has it has this IP address network on using, for example.
yeah. So that is your yeah, so your internet service provider assigns an IP address to the devices that's linked to it. And yes, you if you want to have like multiple IP addresses connected to it, then you'll connect those IP addresses. Yeah. Um, okay, SSH. You might need to understand what SSH means. So SSH stands for Secure Shell. This is how you access server remotely. You know what remote means? So there's two ways you can access your server. You can access via the console, literally go to your AWS account, log in. That's what it means by console. Or you can access it via remote from your terminal. Yeah. So when you SSH stands for Secure Shell, by the way. Secure. And when you SSH, your terminal becomes your server's terminal. So the terminal that you have in your computer becomes your server's one. So they whatever you command
Your
you
command
run,
line.
yeah, whatever you command you type on your Mac or your Windows, it will run on Amazon's
Yeah.
data center. Yeah. So imagine like a phone call between your terminal and EC2 server. You call the EC2 server, you say what's your username, and then they ask a few questions. Is the door 22 basically the port number? Is it open? Yes or no? Is the key correct? So the key that I talked about, the private key, yes. If that's valid, then yes, then you can now start typing commands and things like that. So when you do the lab, you'll see a long command starting with SSH. Show you here.
So, for example, is the
So
command line
wait, so you'll see a
yeah,
long
yeah, yeah,
command here. This command here, SSH here. You need to
yeah.
change. So you need to change when you download your .pem file. You need to make sure it lives wherever it lives. You need to CD into it and then SSH write this command. But then make sure the public IP address is the same as your EC2 IP. Yeah, and then that's it. You need to change that. So once you get in, and by the way, this Ubuntu that you see here, this is the default username for all Ubuntu servers. Yeah, the @ sign here is the server's public IP address. What is Nginx? Because this is, I said I will come back to this later, right? I mentioned it somewhere. Yeah, your software you need to install. And for the lab as well, you also need to install Nginx here. So what is Nginx? So once you SSH into um, once you SSH into a server, it's just a blank machine, a blank Ubuntu machine. There's no website, nothing, no pages, yeah? You need to install something called a web server, okay? So a web server is just a software that listens on port 80 only. So that web server is called Nginx. It's just a server, only a web server only is it actually is pronounced engine inks. Engine, like car engine X. Anyway, so we install it in one command. You have to install it. Yeah. And essentially, when you open your browser or someone opens your browser and they type this HTTP and they type your IP address, which is the EC2 IP address, you see a Nginx welcome page. Yeah. And it will be from a computer that you launched from scratch, from the actual data center. Yeah. So once you install it and you start your EC2 instance, you connect to it actually. And if you type this command on the URL. If you type this URL, the full URL with the IP address, then the welcome page gets served, and that's it. You basically deployed a real website. Okay. I wanted to go through one more area, which is the IAM role. So the different types of roles. So I just want to reiterate what this means. So imagine your EC2 server needs to access another service. So let's say, for example, your EC2 server, you have a website and it's trying to read files from a database, or for example, it's trying to read an image from S3, like a where images are stored. How does the server prove AWS allowed it? That's the question. How can it prove that AWS allowed that connection to happen? So before, what used to happen is EC2 would have keys stored on a disk, yeah, and
Can you
then
say that again?
yeah. So EC2
EC2 server.
the EC2 server would have, for example, keys stored on a disk, secret keys. If any of these get leaked, then
Act.
server is getting a bit hacked. So now EC2 server, the better way, the more appropriate and efficient way is to have a role attached to it. So it's like having you know the difference between a normal civilian and and someone who's a security guard. The security guard will usually wear a high vest, yellow vest, and
Yes,
then
ID on it and
yes,
yellow.
yeah. So it's like EC2
Training.
would yeah. So that role, a role you give to the EC2 is like, you know, that idea that if it carries a uniform, yeah. And then
Yes,
if any other service sees that uniform, they open automatically. So you don't need to,
because we realize they, for example, see the badge. For
yeah,
example, they will understand like security. For example,
yeah, yeah. So what happens is they identify what role they are. I don't know, you could be like role, whatever role that you have, that
yeah,
you assign to it, and then they get access through your any other service. That's how two services are able to talk to each other. You have to specifically mention the role, yeah. So when an EC2 wears a role, AWS hands the server a temporary token. Token is given every hour. If that token expires, sorry, that token will automatically expire, but it's
mm,
never written on a disk. That's the problem was before. If it's written on a disk, it could be retrieved easily. It's never leaked into a file or disk. It can never be committed to GitHub because it doesn't exist as a file. It exists as just a role. That's so when that token is expired, it gets deleted automatically. Yeah, yeah. So given roles is extremely important, and you'll find that how important it is later. Yeah. So a hacker cannot actually access or grab the role. The only thing they can do is grab, what's written on the disk and etc. Never access the role itself. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Your voice is a bit down and cutting. I don't know. Can you hear? Can you guys
Yes.
hear?
Yes. Can anyone not hear me? Yeah, I try to speak louder. Can you hear me now? Is this better now?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that bad.
Okay. Okay. So basically, what we've covered today is learning on multi-factor authentication. So I'm going to go through the labs with you. um, what you need to do because there is step by step here what you have to do. So first is very clear. So you go into your account as the root, you click security credentials under your account name, you go to your account on the top right corner, and then find multi-factor authentication, assign a device, either your own device or phone or the Authenticate app or whatever. Click merge virtual MFA or whatever you choose. It could be like if you have a fingerprint on your laptop or something, choose that one, whichever one you choose. Under access keys, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a section that says access keys. Make sure there's no access keys. And if there is any, delete it. Then after you do that, go to IAM or search it on the console. Click users, create to user, and then put your username, and then you can put a custom password or you can put like a auto-generated password. Then it will take you to a new page, and you check the box attach policies directly. Make sure the password that you created, you make sure you save it somewhere. It will log you out, or you log out yourself and then log back in as the new IAM user. And then also add MFA into that too. But after this, you never log in as the root user. You always use the IAM user instead. Yeah. Once you're inside the IAM user account, you go to IAM again, click user groups, create user. And it was this image that I was describing here about creating the user word. Yeah, here. So you create a group, You create a group. You can then say developers or just mention any group, like let's say finance or
Any name, whatever.
any name, any department name. And then when it gives you the attached permissions, make sure you only click read only access. This is what I said earlier, which is the pre-configured policies. So there's a lot of pre-configured policies. You don't need to create your own one. And then once you create a test user, so basically create another account with that's your test user.
So read only
And then
means nobody cannot delete or change the name.
yeah, only
Just
yeah,
read.
it will just read only. Yeah, it will just read
Mm.
only. That user will only whoever's in the group will only be allowed to read. That's what that
Yes.
means. And then yeah, after that, they go back to IAM, click policies, create policy, and then when you click the JSON tab, add this as well. Just copy this and paste it.
What does
Which
that mean?
base
Before that, before step 4, there is a create a test user, add them to the developers. What
yeah,
that
so
mean?
you need to add them to develop the group that you created. So
Yeah,
once
yeah,
you
yeah.
create the group, then create another account with that's your test user, and then add them to the group, and then make sure they can't launch an instance. So you log in as the test user, and then see if you can actually create launch an instance, which you should not be able to because you only have read only, right? You shouldn't be able to create anything. Yeah.
Okay.
So after this, you write a custom policy. So this one was the predefined policy that Amazon already has. The next step is to create your own one. Yeah. So I've given you a template here. You can just copy this. So this one basically, you remember I said the three actions. So you have the effect, action, resource. So the effect is, for example, allow, and the action is EC2, and the resource is everything. Star means everything, remember? Wildcard means all instances, they're only allowed to describe and list. And if for S3, the other service, again, you're allowing them to only do these things. So they can list all the buckets and they can get the bucket location. That's it. And it's for all types, all S3 buckets. Yeah. Okay. So you name it dev read only policy. This is your custom one. After that, you enable CloudTrail. So go on CloudTrail under your IAM user, search for it, create CloudTrail, give it a name, and then put the storage, create a new S3 bucket, and then it will show you this. You just make sure you click these options. So read and write. That's it. Okay. Once you do that, then go to IAM again, and then click on credential report, and then download the report. If the report has any, shows any access keys, you have to make sure you delete that, or you make sure you take care of it. Yeah. What I'll do, there's a drop-in session tomorrow. I have a drop-in session between 5 and 7. Okay.
Okay.
So between 5 and 7, you can come
So you
in.
will do your demonstration one session.
Yes, no, you have to attempt it yourself, but I'm saying the drop-in session, you can come to the session and I can help you with any of the steps if you're struggling with any of the steps.
What time? Okay, no
Between
problem.
between 5 and 7. Yeah, so I will be online in the same link. So
Mm.
come in the call whenever you're free, even if you're free for only 15 minutes, come in the call, and then you can share your screen, and then we'll go through these steps, yeah? We'll try to hope to finish you guys finish the first two labs by tomorrow. The last one is just the security groups basics. So you just have to submission on what security groups are. The first two is more like the actual implementation. Okay?
Okay. No problem.
Is that okay for everyone?